see you here again for another installment of our journey to ancient Egypt. Today we are going to talk about the pharaohs. Fantastic topic, isn't it? The pharaohs were the rulers of Egypt. They were in charge of the army, government and religion. They were believed to be descended from Ra, king of the gods. It was also assumed that when a pharaoh sat on his throne, which is not the same as a throne, wearing all his symbols of royalty, which include the crown of Lower Egypt or the crown of Upper Egypt, the spirit of the god Horus entered him and spoke as God on earth. The pharaohs ruled Egypt through a network of officials. The most important of these were the local governors, nomarchs. They collected and checked taxes and enforced the law in their area. They all operated under the goddess of law, Mata. The goddess of law and truth was represented as a woman with an ostrich feather crown. Judges wore an image of her such as a pendant on a necklace as a badge of their position. But you might wonder, who was Pharaoh and how did he live? I am saying he because most of them were men, although the last Pharaoh was a woman who was famous for her beauty throughout all the ancient world, and her name was Cleopatra. Of course, life as a pharaoh gave many prerogatives, and many officials, servants, and slaves were at the disposal of the pharaoh. Typical days for a pharaoh included some elaborate early morning rituals to get the pharaoh ready for the day. And this included an official entitled the Chief of the Scented Oil and pasted for rubbing His Majesty's body. When he is clean, dressed and adorned with a huge amount of jewelry, the pharaoh is ready to get his audience chamber where he will hold meetings where the present and future of the ancient Egypt is shaped. Typically, he will be meeting with foreign ambassadors, giving orders to his generals and receiving reports from high-ranking officials. The day's audience completed, he leaves for the temple where he pays tribute to the chief god Amen-Re. The ceremony might be a bit slow, along a bit too stuffy, including with the sacrifice of a bull. But this is what is needed to keep the gods happy and to ensure the stability of society. After lunch, the pharaoh will parade through the streets of his city and he will supervise the works that are being undertaken. As we shall see below, pharaohs were keen to leave a long-lasting legacy of their rule and were unstoppable builders. After a late afternoon ceremony, the pharaoh goes back to his palace where he has an early dinner. As I mentioned earlier, pharaohs were very preoccupied with the image that they would leave to posterity. As soon as he was crowned, a pharaoh ordered an architect, a person who designed building, to begin work on his tomb. Of course, building such edifices represented a lot of work, but in the eyes of pharaohs, it was well worth the effort. Especially, they were not the ones who built them with their hands. Step pyramids were like symbolic stairways to the stars, and they were believed to be the only way for a king to reach the afterlife. We can see here the world-famous Pyramid of Giza, one of the 7 wonders of the world, according to the Greek poet Antipater of Sidon. On the left background is the Pyramid of Khufu, with the Pyramid of Khafre in the foreground. To the right is the pyramid of Menkaure, and to the far right is one of the 3 smaller pyramids of the Queens. Remember that these pyramids were built about 4,500 years ago, which is remarkable. They have resisted the assaults of many generations of robbers, as well as builders of the nearby city of Cairo, who were always on the lookout for building materials they could steal from the pyramids. Further down the Nile were many cities where successive generations of pharaohs built lasting testimonies of their rule. Pharaohs were so concerned about life after death that they asked for their remains to be mummified, that is to say, to preserve their bodies by embalming them and wrapping them in cloth, in order to ensure that their bodies would pass the test of time. They had all the internal organs in the main cavities of their bodies removed and left to rest in canopic jars, such as the ones depicted here. Whilst Tutankhamun has become famous in the modern world because of the unique artistic qualities of his mortuary mask, as well as the exceptional condition in which it was found, the legacy of important Egyptians could be literally set in stone, as we have seen in the case of the pyramids, but also in later periods. For instance, Queen Hatshepsut, the second historical confirmed female pharaoh, had an entire mortuary temple built for her around 1450 BC. Around 1200 before the Christian era, Pharaoh Ramses II ordered a series of temples to be built in Abu Simbel, which today is one of the most visited sites in Egypt, as it is an elaborate complex of temples of the highest standard. We see here a statue of representing the Pharaoh Ramses II giving an audience. One of his successors built a magnificent temple, of which we see here the remains of the hypostyle hall, which refers to an interior space whose roof rests on pillars or on columns. Pharaohs were at the top of a complex pyramid of power and left some long-lasting testimonies of their civilization. Next week we will be examining in more detail the role and meaning of pyramids and mummies. So be ready for a few spooky discoveries.